Coming up on this episode of Echoes of Coventry.
Paul Sub was always engaging and supportive of me, supportive of the music. I had never met a person of that generation who kind of understood what we were going through and what we were striving for, like Paul Sub. Always full of joy. All of the things that you heard in the first podcast with the trials and tribulations he was going through and trying out other businesses until something stuck. Who would know? Who would know from this jovial, sweet, giving man?
My mother would know.
Yeah, well, your mother would know.
My mother would know.
She would know.
Welcome to 1970s New York City, where Coventry, the legendary live music venue, originally the Popcorn Pub, became a stepping stone for younger generation bands like the New York Dolls and Kiss, pioneering the transition from rock and roll to glitter, punk, and beyond. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, and this is Echoes of Coventry.
New York City, call my name.
For this episode, we are glad to be joined by Sid Moskowitz. Sid is one of Charlie's longtime friends. He was there through all of Charlie's music, played at the Coventry, grew up in the neighborhood on the Upper East Side, and I'm sure he will have some very interesting stories to tell that Charlie will pay him not to tell.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Absolutely.
It was 1961 when I was sitting at my desk in first grade at Ramaz on the Upper East Side when Charlie Sub walked in, a new student. Most of us had already been there, or veterans, and we had been there since kindergarten. But he walked in and he was brand new. We remained fast friends for all of grade school, junior high school, and late junior high and early high school. I think separately, the music bug hit us because we were not there together anymore in high school. But a mutual friend, Claude Alpert, taught me the bass line to Sunshine of Your Love. Cream had come out in 67, 68, and that was it for me. That person, Claude, he formed a band. Charlie was the drummer. I was the bass player. Claude was the guitar player, and we had someone on keyboards. That then evolved in the 1970, 71, into a band called Blue Suede. And that's kind of really, even though I had grown up with Charlie through elementary school and all, that was the first time I had met Paul Sub. I always knew Charlie's mom because she was always there when we came home from school, but the dad was never around, and I didn't know why, and it wasn't my business to ask. But when we formed the band and started doing music, I got to know Paul Sub because he welcomed us to his venue to rehearse. We played 2 shows there that I recall. One specific one was really memorable for me. We played Chuck Berry, we played some Dylan. I used to play lead guitar on the song All Along the Watchtower. That was my big spotlight song. You know, we were a bunch of high school kids. We got off the stage and took our little amplifiers off the stage because in those days, venues didn't have back lines. You had to bring everything yourself. And the rumble of the Marshall amps is what I remember. Filling the back line behind me and the huge double bass drum kit behind me. And then this band came on, all made up, all glammed out. I had never seen anything like it before. And neither had the audience that night. That night, the Coventry was very much like an Archie Bunker bar. It was full of these Con Ed guys and all these middle-class working guys who were there to have a drink, who loved us because we were like their kids. I remember we got inordinate applause for what we were doing. So we finished our set. These glam guys got on there, and they got booed by this particular crowd. Bring back the kids, bring back the kids. So that's my memory of the rock and roll scene.
It was a band.
I don't remember which glam band it was. It could have been the Brats. It could have been one of the other ones. But I mean, they sounded great to me, but the audience there that night enjoyed seeing their kids on the stage instead of the makeup. But my memory of the Coventry was how cool was Charlie's dad. Paul Sub was always engaging and supportive of me and supportive of the music. I had never met a person of that generation who kind of understood what we were going through and what we were striving for, like Paul Sub. always full of joy. All of the things that you heard in the first podcast with the trials and tribulations he was going through and trying out other businesses until something stuck. Who would know? Who would know from this jovial, sweet, giving man?
My mother would know.
Yeah, well, your mother would know.
My mother would know.
She would know. But to me, it was a whole different type of way to be a dad that I saw.
What are you saying? Willie was like a...
Willie was fine.
Was he a curmudgeon?
No, Willie made sure my bank account was taken care of. But there was
Really?
an emotional component.
Okay.
Supportive of my dad wasn't too thrilled about the noise coming out of my bedroom when I started playing "Sunshine of Your Love" bass lines for 26 hours. He wasn't
That's the noise.
He wasn't too thrilled with that. But Paul was like, no matter what we may have sounded like at that time, he was all in. He was all in. And that's what you need when you're 16, 17 years old and you don't know how you're being viewed. So that's kind of my connection with the Coventry and the subs, and it continues to this day.
Well, that made you special because Michael Newman,
Yeah.
one of our close friends, also, he did not feel the same way about Michael. He hated Michael.
Really?
Yeah, he was one of our group. It might be because one night, I mean, we were all underage at the Coventry. So one night, Michael drank too much and he threw up on my father's shoes. He came
That'll
out.
do it.
That'll do it.
Came out. Sid did not do that.
Well, you have to understand that as I mentioned to you, Paul Sub knew my dad also. They were businessmen in the same neighborhood. And my mom knew Minna Sub. They knew each other from parent night. So there was a parental relationship as well. So maybe some of that spilled over from Paul to me as well. All I know is that he was always wonderful to me.
And I heard stories that during the Zodiac days,
Yeah.
the neighborhood kids, the runaways, he would actually, help them out, give them food or let them only pay just a little bit to get.
Yeah, absolutely. My father's that way all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always astounded when we came up. Even later, when he was at the Coventry, and I would drive with him across the bridge from Queens to Manhattan, and it was the '70s. They were not good times. There was always like somebody waiting for a handout, wanting some money, poking their hand through the window. He would never deny anybody anything. He'd always give if he had a sandwich, he'd give him that. If there was a couple of bucks in the car, he'd give him that. To me, I was going like, why are you talking to these people? But he was like, he would give whatever little bit he had to these people. So he was always compassionate with this stuff. So that was just his mentality.
Well, and I got the feeling that your dad was very much, he wanted to provide.
Yeah.
He wanted to find something to make money. But I also feel like the popcorn pub he didn't get and turn it into the Coventry because he was thinking, I'm going to have this influential music venue. He's like, I can sell drinks and give away popcorn so they drink more drinks. And sure, you kids want to play here, you figure it out. I'm not paying you. You figure out who's going to play and when they're going to do it. And it's like, it was just in that spirit, it's a spirit of giving and generosity because he didn't have to let them play there. I get that impression from your dad, that the soft spot down inside the big boss man.
I agree. With my dad, it wasn't a big picture. It was like an intimate, in the moment, gut feeling about what he should do. It wasn't like he did not have a dream of being like an influential anything. He didn't have a dream of like being like some major musical influence. It was like he was in the moment, and you can imagine like kids coming off the street wanting to play, and like letting them play.
Yeah.
So I mean that was his reward.
And you have to understand that survivors view the world in the moment because they survived and can't believe it.
Yeah.
And when they have children, and they have children of survivors, it's an unbelievable miracle to them that they survived and there's another generation coming after them. So the innate generosity of the giving is because I think Paul talked about the family had something, and then in a minute it was gone.
Yeah.
In a minute it was gone. And they had to recapture all of that again. And so knowing how it was taken from him once, he knows how it can be gone in a minute again. So why not share it while you have it? So this is growing up in a survivor's home.
Yeah, I totally agree.
This is what you experience.
That's well put.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he didn't take away a negative attitude about it. He didn't like bury his head in the sand and go like, I got screwed once.
Right.
You know, it was like, no, that's not where he was going to go. He was going to be giving and open and receptive.
So we've heard what the city was like during the late 60s, early 70s, that it was gritty, in some ways safer than it is now, in other ways more dangerous.
Yeah.
But there's so much that, you know, in the entertainment field, in literature, that gets centered around the 70s. What do you think makes people nostalgic for that time, given what it was?
Well, they're different things. I mean, musically speaking, the 70s meant a lot of things. It meant like a transition from like big like powerhouse rock bands to disco, like to Bee Gees and stuff like that. So things were changing. It became more of like a nightlife dance thing, which involved dance venues, sort of like culture, which is probably a lot of cocaine and a lot of other stuff like that. So that was a different thing. But as far as like being dangerous, if you're on the Upper East Side in Manhattan, you're not going to be as affected as if you're in the Bronx, where like your entire neighborhood has been burnt down. You know, so the 70s had a lot of implications politically, geographically, infrastructure-wise. The city really was a giant mess. It was bankrupt. So there was a lot of stuff, but to tell you the truth, if you were in a certain neighborhood, you didn't feel it that way. You didn't feel like life was coming to an end. But if you watch TV, literally on TV, abandoned buildings, nobody there, broken windows, fires. It was incredibly crazy to look at. That was New York on some level in some boroughs. So it was very chaotic. New York was really a mess.
Yeah.
You know.
I do think you're right. The music, when you think about what music was in the 70s, yes, you had the change to disco, but you still had the 70s rock bands still carrying on. It was like it started to diverge, but it's still some of the greatest music that was ever written.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that was part of the Coventry scene as well, with the glam and the post, you know, punk and the punk thing, the Ramones and the glitter. And there was so many different variations of music that were coming to light. I mean, 3-chord songs as opposed to these opuses, you know, from the West Coast and like all this other stuff. All great stuff, but all changing in this crucible of like, you know, what the country was at that time. And on top of that, in New York, along with punk, along with like the Ramones, along with like the New York Dolls and all that other stuff, the Bronx was burning down. So, I mean, I don't really think that glitter really spoke too much about that. I don't know about any glitter songs that were talking about, you know, social chaos in that sense. Yeah. So there was a whole genre and a whole litany of stuff that was not talked about. You know, I think maybe some of like the disco might have addressed itself to like inner city stuff. So it was a really interesting time for music.
To bring it back to Coventry for a minute, when you guys were there being around the bands, did you glean anything from being around those bands?
Well, you see, Charlie and I, interesting, as much as we have been able to collaborate and produce good music in our later years here, I was not a big fan of that genre at all. You know, I'm a blues rock guy, and that glam stuff and that Kiss stuff and all that was not for me at all. So it didn't impress me on any level. I learned what I didn't want to do.
Sometimes that's very important.
It's true. It's true.
And I'm the one who ended up with no musical career, so I guess someone else made the right call.
As far as learning stuff, it was, you know, it was really just a teenage experience, being mesmerized by costumes, glam, loud music. But the visual aspect was overwhelming. I really did like that, though. It was like incredible to me.
Full moon buzzes in the Broadway lights. It's a perfect fit. Let's talk about it.
Joining me is Rich Brotman. We're thrilled to have Rich with us. He is a key figure in the revival of the legendary Coventry music scene, and he has been instrumental in bringing the Coventry story back to the spotlight. His passion for rock and roll's gritty roots and his dedication to preserving its history have spearheaded numerous projects, including this podcast and the Bliss Street Off-Broadway show. So you kind of became involved because you're a member of Sound Dogs.
Well, my day job, which is really a day and night job, was video editing and post-production work. So usually I would be coming home either after a editing or a gig or a jam, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had to walk the dog. And as I'm walking the dog at 1 in the morning, there was always this other guy who was walking a dog, and it was just the two of us walking our dogs. So eventually we started talking, and he was a musician. He asked me if I was a musician, because I guess that's the reason we were coming home late.
Right.
And he was doing some DJ work or something at Ethel's. And somehow he heard that they were looking for a piano player or keyboardist to bring in to the songs that Charlie had written. And he suggested me.
Okay.
So Sid called me up and said, come on to a studio and see how you feel with these songs. So I come over, I meet Charlie and Sid and Pat and the drummer, and there were no charts. They did tell me what key it was in, and they just started to play, and I just started to move around it. And there were a couple of songs that really stood out in that very first time playing them, that, you know, I was able to find the center where I would want to be with that song. And that still remains true, that I'm still playing licks based on that initial contact. So I really, you know, there was something about the songs, first of all, that were very engaging. And then I started to notice that there was a narrative implied by the songs. If you put them in a certain order, they kind of told a little story. And you know, Charlie was not really saying much about anything. But then, you know, he started to tell me that they were based on memories of his life. Then he started telling me stories about his family. He told me one time, waiting for rehearsal to start, about how he was coming down the stairs to go have breakfast before going to school, and he found his father handcuffed to the banister because he'd been mugged the night before.
Okay.
And the way he described it to me, I saw he did it like it was a sitcom.
Okay.
It was just the natural flow of that story really impressed me. Those stories and these songs, there's a whole nother level to them. And then I found out about his parents' story, and I had to rethink the whole thing again. And then I realized that this is a really important story. So I found these family histories to be really helpful in understanding why our parents and the parents of so many of my friends were kind of strange. You know, it turns out, you know, there's a lot of PTSD if you're in the, you know, in the Army or undergoing war in your teenage years, which many of our parents were. So we were coming of age in the 70s, and it was like, well, what do we do with this information? You know, where's our place? And I became to realize that our place is in helping getting those stories, making sure they're told. It's a very different world now than it was in 1970.
Sure.
And as it's getting further and further away, I still find that having come of age during those years, certain things were really important. This project and this band and this story just said, you know, you got to make it. You got to make this a project. You got to somehow figure out how to get all this stuff into a format that can be a single, but it could also be a thematic concept CD. It could be a live show. And we've been doing that since 2016, you know, working with the songs. The band started to get its sound together, and we realized we should do this as a story, because that otherwise it's the only way to distinguish ourselves as an original project. We have to have a larger story beyond just playing cool music. And then the pandemic hit. So it was like everything stops. So during that time, one of the things that pulled me through was I kept thinking about the story, how it could be done. So we had some rehearsal tapes, and, you know, I would play around with them, try to overdub things and try to come up with something that I could then communicate with Charlie and the rest of the guys in the band to say, hey, let's do this larger concept thing. And as we came out of the pandemic, I just happened to be recommended to speak with Lissa Mora at Theater for the New City. Because I was interested really in trying to find a writer who can, write the story that Charlie and I have written about his family. And within a half an hour of listening to me, she said, okay, let's do this. We'll do it as a co-production with the Theater of the New City. And we'll pick a date in a year.
Okay.
This was March of 2022. So the curtain was going to go up in April 2023. So we had a year to write it up and turn it into a musical. And we did that. And we had an 18-show run. It was really well received. It was successful in terms of what it was. And we were fortunate to be able to put it on.
When you first kind of pitched this to Charlie, was he on board? Was he resistant? I mean, it seems like it would have just come out of left field for him. Like,
at first, I don't know what they really thought of me. I'm amazed that they put up with it. The fact that I would get so into this particular idea. But then they were doing stuff that was just really exciting, just being themselves.
Yeah.
And Charlie's explanations that would only come out when they came out. So I had to be ready to make sure my phone was ready to push record or whatever it was, because all of a sudden a story would be there. And I just started collecting those and getting them transcribed and writing them up and speaking to his friend Michael and interviewing his parents and beginning some research, the Village Voice ads. And then I'm starting to see, that there was something going on. But they don't remember it. There's no check stubs. There's no Coventry logos, no photographs.
Right.
There's just the One Kiss video from January of 1973 on YouTube, But then I did start to find some articles. Well, some people went to this place. There was somebody there. And then as I dug around a little more, and we got an email out of the blue from Ronnie Lundell, who's lives in Sweden. He's a big Kiss fan. And he edits a magazine, a fanzine of Kiss.
Okay.
And he emailed us because he saw the band's website. He wanted to know if we were the Paul Sub who had Coventry, because he was writing an article about the history. And he'd done all this research from Sweden, all the stuff that we didn't know and they didn't know.
Yeah.
So we hooked up the interview, and it just happened to come at the time we were researching the story. And he wrote this marvelous article that really fills in a lot of gaps. And we're starting to put together a story. It's kind of wanting to be told, and it's got us telling it for it.
Yeah.
This idea has just gotten deeper and opened up in ways that I never would have imagined. And then life imitating art, imitating life. I mean, because the story isn't over. In many ways, the meaning of it, in the search for finding meaning, because no one had really thought about it before, then things happen like the mural and the Queen's Mark that who knew that was going to happen? So it's like documentary is, in fact, it is in fact life. You're living with certain ideas, working with certain ideas that are important, and we're going to try to bring these ideas in a format that people can be entertained by, but also experience the fact that it's something with a lot of room in it.
Right.
And you can really find out about these. And you're going to find out about the generation that went through World War II and, the refugee experience. And that's 1974 in many ways is very analogous to the situation in 2024, politically and otherwise. There's lots of similarities. And New York in that period of 77, before gentrification, was in a way the end and the beginning.
Yeah, and so you're a deadhead, and glitter rock is not your genre, but yet you have found the human interest in this story to really reignite and give Coventry the light that it should have gotten.
Well, the thing is that Charlie was writing these songs 20, 30 years after the memory that inspired them.
Right.
So, and plus at the time that he was going through this in real life, he was drumming in a band. Mm-hmm. Now he's taught himself piano and guitar, and songs are coming out and lyrics that are talking about it in such an authentic way that it's like, he's just letting it come through him, and that's what I'm sensing. And we have to kind of let these songs play out because they have something they want to say and they're demanding to be heard.
Right.
And we're just trying to do our best to tell it right. And we've begun to have great people, creative people who know how to make podcasts, produce records, arrange a band to help us sort our way through it so that we can present the stuff and people can really enjoy it and get something out of it.
Well, what is your next plan? Like, what's your goal? What's your hope?
The next step is we're working with Matt Shane, who is a Grammy award-winning record producer. He saw us live, play at Ethel's, and I said, well, this is what we got. How do we turn this into an album for people to enjoy? So we have a lot of people now, working on it in different ways, and it's just really growing in an interesting way. So it's got a life to it. And I'm committed to that. And I'm just grateful we've had the opportunity to do it to the extent that we have, and that we have the opportunity to take it to the next level, to another place, make something happen.
Sure. Well, I'm grateful to have been a part of it. The musical was an amazing journey for me, getting to sing those songs and getting to tell the stories and getting to know you and Charlie and the whole band.
Let me just do this. Please. I just want to tell you how much I love this guy for doing the story that he's doing and the dedication he's put into it. I mean, lots of criticism, lots of ups and downs, lots of blowback, lots of questioning, like his intentions of what he wants to do. But I mean, he's brought it to this point. It's a miraculous endeavor. Rich, I love you.
Oh, love you.
Love you.
And great partnership.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Echoes of Coventry. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Bliss Street NYC on Facebook and Instagram, and at The Sound Dogs on Facebook and Instagram to keep up with the latest episodes and behind-the-scenes content. Stay tuned for more tales from New York's homegrown rock and roll scene, and I'll catch you around the neighborhood.